Better yet, I would like to take you with me on some of the trips I've made all over Alaska as a reporter for one of our nation's largest daily newspapers. A good time to go north, believe it or not, is in the middle of the winter. You can drive across Canada on either of two highways which lead to Dawson Creek in the province of British Columbia. That is where the Alaska Highway begins. Distances are longer between cities and towns up here, for we're now entering America's last frontier. It's the middle of January, and a few days ago it was 40 below zero right here, but today it has warmed up to 32 above. The Alaska Highway, of course, stays frozen solid at this time of year, no matter how much the temperature goes up or down. And it's smooth, because after every storm, the snow is scraped off its gravel surface. We keep on driving even though it gets dark early in the afternoon. And not until next morning do we have a good look at the lodge where we rented a cozy cabin the night before. We find plenty of gas stations and lodges along the way, and frequently we meet cars and trucks. In one place we find a crew from an oil company drilling a test hole at the edge of the highway, just as if it were July instead of January. Farther on, we see a truck upside down beside the highway, and we realize we must drive with the greatest of care. Most of the Alaska Highway is in Canada, but after we have driven 1,200 miles northwestward from Dawson Creek, we cross the border, going from Canada's Yukon Territory into Alaska. By this time, the temperature has dropped again, and it's 40 below zero. But we're dressed for cold weather, so we don't mind. Comfortable in our warm clothing, we enjoy the delicate beauty of the Alaska landscape in midwinter. Even at high noon in the far north, the sun hangs quite low above the horizon. The farther north we go, the more we realize that winter doesn't slow things down a bit. Even the moose are out, running us a race on the highway, or browsing on tree branches for lunch. In another spot, we find a herd of buffalo. So we're not surprised by the time we reach Alaska's largest city, Anchorage, to find even more activity. We're just in time for one of the carnivals held each winter. Years ago, dog teams figured importantly in Alaska, but today they are used mostly for racing. Large crowds line the main street of Anchorage to watch the dog sled races, even overflowing into the countryside along the 20-mile course, which ends at the starting point in front of the city hall. Every day during the carnival, there's a fur auction with lively bidding, and you can buy a lovely neck piece direct from the trapper who caught it, or if you prefer, a hat. Eskimos come to the carnival to share in the celebration, and this includes ceremonial Eskimo dances, telling of great hunting parties, great legends of the past. And, of course, there's a ball game, which is all the more fun because it's played entirely on snowshoes. Going to school in Alaska is about the same as going to school in Ohio or Connecticut or California or any other state. Many communities up north have brand new school buildings, which were built to accommodate the increase in Alaska's population following the Second World War. And when summer comes, well, you can have a whale of a lot of fun going swimming, as these people are doing at Anchorage. The more we see of Anchorage, the more the people there seem like the people back home. And the reason, of course, is that most of them came north only a short time ago. Usually they are employed in jobs connected somehow with national defense. But many of them like Alaska so well, they will stay, even if their defense jobs end. They find a challenge in the northern frontier, a challenge to make new homes and live better lives. It's a lot different in the small village of Aniak, 300 miles west of Anchorage. Salmon are being caught here in fish wheels, which scoop them up out of the Kuskokwim River. This keeps Mother very busy, cleaning and washing each salmon. Mother, in this case, is an Eskimo, as are the other 140 people who live in Aniak. Eskimo mothers have been doing this year after year for centuries. While smaller Eskimos keep the potato patch well cultivated. The standard of living for Eskimos is far below that of the white people of Alaska. Eskimo homes in far-off Nome are dilapidated shacks, sometimes leaning crazily where they have settled into the permanently frozen ground. Many Eskimos have moved from their native villages to larger settlements such as Nome, but even there they still get much of their living from nature, by hunting and fishing, or by picking berries which grow in the tundra. The reason Eskimos are so poor is that steady jobs are still very scarce in the far north, although once in a while steady work is available, as it was at this tin mine, 90 miles northwest of Nome. Incidentally, this is the only place in North America where tin is found. Of course, to understand Alaska better, Eskimos and all, we must go back several hundred years, back to 1741, when Alaska was discovered by a Russian expedition, by two ships sailing eastward from Siberia. Russian traders came next, building villages along the coast in several places. Russian churches still stand in Alaska. But Russia sold Alaska to the United States in 1867 for $7,200,000. And then Americans began to explore the Northland. Gold prospectors were on the scene promptly. Biggest gold discoveries occurred near the turn of the century in the Klondike and at Nome. These were followed by the gold rushes in which thousands of prospectors swarmed into Alaska. One of the first things they learned was that Alaska is pretty big. In fact, it's 1/5 as large as the United States. They also discovered that Alaska has some of the most rugged mountains in the world. Today we can see these beautiful mountains perfectly from an airplane. This is what you can see just a few miles from Anchorage when you fly over the Chugach Mountains. This is Glacier Land, where the Ice Age lingers, where heavy snowfall each winter adds up to thousands of tons of snow, sliding down the steep sides of mountains into valleys, where it is compressed by its own weight into ice. Then it begins its slow journey to the sea, for these are rivers of ice, flowing very slowly, only a few inches a day, but still they are flowing. The long dark lines on the glacier are called moraines, and they are formed by rocks which fall from the steep mountainsides onto the edges of the glacier. And then where two branches of the glacier join, the moraine flows down the middle. Toward the left, in the middle of the ice, you can see an island of rock. It's called a nunatak, and the glacier flows around it. When you get a close-up view of a glacier, you know it's no place to go ice skating. There are hundreds of glaciers in Alaska. One of them is larger than the state of Rhode Island. It is called Malaspina Glacier. Here is a smaller one, which flows directly into the sea. And here is another melting fast in the warm summer sun. When they break apart and float away, glaciers form icebergs, which are a menace to navigation. Some ships have been sunk in Alaska waters by running into icebergs. But glaciers are beautiful. Up in Alaska, you can drive right up to some of them and have a good look. And there are other things you can do up north that are amazing. For example, let's fly from Anchorage 300 miles southwest to the Alaska Peninsula. There, on the shore of a pretty lake, you can pick up a large rock and throw it into the water, and it floats, and so do all the little rocks. And do you know why? These are rocks of pumice, and they came from the crater of this volcano, Katmai volcano, which exploded in 1912. It looks peaceful enough now, but just before it exploded, Katmai volcano looked something like this. Alaska is volcano country too, you see. And any of these cones might split their sides wide open someday, as one mountain did near Katmai, creating the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. This used to be a lush green valley, but during the Katmai eruption, it was smothered under a thick blanket of white-hot sand. Today it's a desolate place. Not a living thing grows there, and only a few of the 10,000 Smokes are left. As well as glaciers and volcanoes, Alaska has wide sweeps of tundra that stretch for hundreds of miles. Tundra country is beautiful in its own way. And Alaska's largest rivers are found there. Here's the Yukon River, just before freeze-up, which turns the countryside into a gigantic jigsaw puzzle. Rising high above the tundra is North America's highest mountain, Mount McKinley, 20,300 feet high. In Mount McKinley National Park, you can see wildlife everywhere. Mountain sheep on rocky slopes. grizzly bears, and grizzly bear cubs enjoying their lunch, moose, caribou, and a marmot, friendly enough to become a pet. Of course, Alaska is famous for her salmon. And for her fabulous game fish, which sometimes reach an amazing size. For many years, the salmon fishing industry was larger than any other up north, and very profitable for those who own canneries. In recent years, however, overfishing and inadequate regulation have depleted the annual harvest of salmon. This has caused much concern, and communities which formerly prospered from fishing are turning to other activities. Ketchikan, which used to call itself the salmon capital of the world, now looks to timber for its main activity. A large new plant has been built there for the production of high-grade pulp. Which is shipped to the eastern United States for manufacture into rayon. Of course, Alaska still has gold mining, which today is carried on by huge dredges. Important to all industry up north is the development of water power, as in this hydroelectric plant near Ketchikan, and this one near Anchorage. Transportation to interior Alaska is provided by the Alaska Railroad, which operates over some of the most rugged country in North America. Pulling heavy loads of goods needed in the settlement and defense of Alaska. The railroad starts at Seward on the coast and runs through Anchorage to Fairbanks, a distance of 470 miles. On the way, it crosses Matanuska Valley, a prosperous farming area near Anchorage. Here again, we find that living in Alaska is almost the same as in Michigan or North Dakota or Colorado. While we're in Matanuska Valley, let's go to the fair. We find that competition is keen among the young farmers, and the judges have to study their notes to decide who gets first prize. One of the happiest winners of a blue ribbon is Kathy, with her dressed-up chicken. Then there's a pretty cowgirl. And a cow parade. Nobody can hang on to the greased pig. But it's a different story with the greased pole. The problem is, how do you climb it? There must be some way. Well, it's no wonder they're trying so hard, because on top of the pole, $1 bill. Well, Johnny, that's the story of Alaska as I've seen it. I hope you enjoyed the trip, and if there's anything more you want to know, just drop me a line.